I wanted to talk about some books that I have recently read, and I want to make them very specific. So we're going to be going over the funnest book, the most compelling, the most courageous, and so on and so on. So without further ado, let us get to the funnest book. This is my entire reading taste when it comes to thrillers. This is my most recent 5-star read, and I love it. I love it so much. This book had everything that I love to see in a thriller. It was tension, secrets, lies, affairs, money, drama, plot twists, psychopaths, a murder mystery, detectives, drama, you name it. This book has it. And it did have a lot of twists, but his writing style, David Ellis, his writing style is so good. If I didn't say the name of the book, it's Look Closer by David Ellis. His writing style is so good. It's so clever. He paces the book perfectly, and he just plots out each twist carefully, and oh, it's just so good. This was such a fun read, and I really appreciate books, I realize, that build the plot around the characters. It says that we have a whirlwind affair, a $20 million trust fund about to come due, a decades-long grudge, and an obsession with revenge. Oh, I love it when revenge is in a book. And both Vicky and Simon are liars, but just who exactly is conning who? I'm telling you, if you want a fun read, you want to pick this one up. Next up, we are going to talk about the cutest book that I have read recently. It's Summer Romance. Oh, I could not wait to talk about this book with you guys. This was another 5-star for me. So this is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. I don't know. Either way, it's by Annabelle, okay? And she has quickly become one of my favorite romance authors. I really, really appreciate how comforting and how relatable her stories are. Also like how short they are. Like, she's very intentional. She gets straight to the point. There isn't a lot of superfluous fillers or fluff or just any unnecessary junk in the book. It follows a soon-to-be divorced mom of 2 as she navigates grief and trying to get her life back on track. And she also finds love unexpectedly. So we absolutely love that in a romance book. And I really like how the author, Annabelle, she can really capture the essence and the lightheartedness of a summer romance. And I'm just like, oh, this was so good. This book gave me so many feels, and it's like a very mundane story. Like, she makes mundanity look very appealing. And I loved even seeing her journey and her dynamic with her children, mainly her daughter. Raising her daughter gave her so much more grace for her mother. And that was another major thing in the book. So she's navigating grief because her mother died. And she just is like thinking about all these. Oh, wait, child, let me give me something to drink. Excuse me. That's better. Okay, so she is remembering all these summer traditions that she had with her mother, and so it's just like a happy time for her, but it's also a very hard time. Obviously, you lost your mom, your house is a mess, you're about to be divorced, so she's just struggling with a lot. And she tackles grief in such a heartfelt, delicate way. Let me see here, because there was a page that I wanted to read you guys. I closed the book, and then I remember I cried myself to sleep, but this isn't even that type of book. Like, something that she said that made me agree with her. I just felt so honored and grateful that I had the opportunity to be loved by my dad, who was my parent that I lost. At the end of chapter 42, I said I sobbed after reading this chapter. I was overcome with so much grief. I loved my dad like she loved her mom. I feel so grateful to be loved by him. I took a few days before picking this book back up again, and I remember that. I just remember as soon as I finished this chapter, and I just felt so sad, and I was like, you know what? I just need a release, and that's basically what I did. And another thing that I really liked about this book is she finds love unexpectedly, and I loved the main character. This is actually a closed door romance, so if you are wondering about spice level, it's very low. Like, you know something happens, but again, it's closed door. This is a age gap trope where she, the woman, is older than the guy, but it's such a sweet, wholesome love story, and I have an insane amount of highlights and underline, but love a male character who is kind with your emotions and responsible with the love that you have entrusted him with. Oh my gosh, and respects your boundaries. There was a part in here, let me see if I can find it real quick. I take a second to enjoy the feel of his hand in mine and the sound of light rain outside the window, the quiet of this room, and the space he's giving me to decide how I feel. It's been a long time since a man has worried about what I wanted, and it's been a long time since I've wanted something this much. This is so freaking cute. Then there was this other line, last one, and it just says, I love the person I am with him. I love how there's no hiding or ducking or making myself small. Stop playing with me. You guys need to read this book. If you are a romance girly and you have not read one of Annabelle's books, what are you waiting for? If you like romance and you haven't read this book, what are you waiting for? This book is cute, cute, cute. So the next one is the most courageous story that I have read recently, and it is Educated by Tara Westover. So basically, this is a fascinating story about a girl who's being raised by extremists with no formal education, and she goes on to get a PhD from Cambridge University. Listen, every odd was against this girl. Okay, she's essentially self-taught. This was also probably one of the most captivating books that I've read recently. I just cannot believe that she was going through some of these things. Her dad did not believe in doctors, so they were not getting like proper medical care. Some of them did not even have birth certificates. They were constant preparation for the last day. And the biggest thing is that her dad did not believe in the public school system because he believes that it corrupts children, which I understand. But it's like, bro, have a homeschool plan. And I think the mom might have tried for a second. She didn't stick to it. So they just worked and they were like successful in their own way. Her mother was like a midwife and she's very holistic. They had like a family business. And so basically they were all taught to just work for the family business. And this book is just such a reminder that education is powerful and it is the one thing nobody can take away from you. I remember my aunt had said that once before, like everything can be taken, you know, if you don't do right, your kids, you can be locked up, your freedom, you know, your car, your house, all these different things. No one can ever take away your education. It's up here. And so the fact that this girl bust her butt to get where she is today, it's wildly impressive. She was also emotionally abused by her parents, and just there's so much manipulation and narcissism. The dad clearly is not well. Clearly the brother is not well, and they don't do anything about it. Like I said, they don't believe in doctors. So not only did this girl have to self-teach herself so that she could get free from all this abuse and manipulation and just so much turmoil that she was being raised in, she had to do all of that while being manipulated, while being abused, while being ridiculed. It's just, this is a very powerful book. I was trying so hard not to annotate, so that's where there's like none in the beginning and then there's some at the end. Obviously when I annotate, I read a little bit slower, and I was just trying to like whip through it because it was just getting so good. But it was this one part in here that was so good. She says, as long as we had never asked, it was possible to believe that they would help. To tell them was to risk the unthinkable. It was to risk learning that they already knew. This is when she was talking about her brother. Like if her and her sister stood up and actually told them that he was like physically abusing them. And then there was this other moment. It was so beautiful. Oh my God. And I can't share the other quote that I wanted to share because it would be like a spoiler, but this one is definitely not. Her mother and her having a conversation about the abuse that she endured by her brother. And she says, the mother, she says, you were my child. I should have protected you. And then Tara, she says, I didn't understand the magic of those words then, and I don't understand it now. I know only this, that when my mother told me she had not been the mother to me that she wished she had been, she became that mother for the first time. This was such a good book, and it's actually been on my TBR since last year, so I'm just really glad that I finally got to that. This next book, honey, okay, so it's a newbie. If you watched my last video, you saw that I just recently got this book. But yes, this is the most political book that I have ever read, and it is Holly by Stephen King. This is also my first Stephen King novel, and after reading this book, I think I'd give him another shot. I do think that he's an amazing storyteller. He has great storytelling skills. He's just very long-winded, as you can see. It's like, Stephen, get on with it, bro. You do not need to keep reiterating certain things, but it's fine. So basically in this one, our main character, Holly, her mom dies and she's supposed to be on leave and her partner has COVID. She ends up getting a phone call. She's a private investigator. She gets a phone call from a mom and her daughter has come up missing. She's hysterical. Holly doesn't want to take the case, but she ends up taking the case, and then she ends up finding out as she's investigating the disappearance of this young lady, how her disappearance resembles a few other ones. You know, she's like piecing together a puzzle, and it was just so cool to see her do this. That's why I think he's such a long-winded storyteller. It was interesting. I will say that my favorite part was the part where we get revenge beyond the grave. You know, I love a little revenge moment. I would say to check trigger warnings for this one. Some of the major ones are like racism, homophobia, and cannibalism. It's a big one. Okay, there's at least 10 different triggers, and especially COVID-19. That is talked about a lot. He's talking about vaccines, Trump, Black Lives Matter. Like, these characters are really just being used to push a lot of his political beliefs at that time. Where the girl, she goes missing a few blocks away from this elderly couple who just, you know, they seem so bougie, but they're actually just extremely racist, extremely weird. They are very educated, but they're clearly psychopaths, and I enjoy reading about psychopaths because I'm just like, I need to know why you think the way that you think. Like, what's going on with you? What's going on in your mind? But aside from that, like, a lot of the facts, they were very interesting to me. I can't talk about it too much without, like I said, I don't want to give anything away, but a lot of facts that are being discussed around, let's just call it their hobby. So this old couple, their hobby, okay, a lot of facts and thought processes. Okay, so his thought processes are wrong. This is what Stephen said. But a lot of the facts about their hobby are correct. I know I'm being so like coded right now, but hopefully you know what I mean. But yeah, if you do not like books with politics, you are not gonna like this one, but I liked it. So moving on, the next book would have to be the saddest book that I have read recently, which is A Thousand Boy Kisses by Telly Cole. I believe that's how you say the name. This was such a heartbreakingly beautiful love story, and it's such a reminder that we have to be grateful for our life, and that life is fragile, and that love can be so restorative and it can be so healing. I will say that at the beginning of this book, dude was wildin'. He was very disrespectful. I think, what is his name? Is it Rue? Rune. So Rune, he was a lot. I'm like, okay, this YA and y'all got kids reading this book. You know, don't talk to your parents like this. But I understand that he was just so upset and he was so angry. So basically this one, we have two main characters, Rune and Poppy. Rune's dad, they end up moving away, and then Poppy and him were together before they moved away, but then she decides she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and he doesn't know why. He just knows that he's heartbroken. That's the only girl that he's ever loved, and so he ends up coming back, and they end up finding out why. And then we go on this journey with Rune and Poppy, and it's sad. I'm not gonna lie, it's very sad, but like I said, it's also extremely beautiful. Yeah, if you're looking for a sad book to read this time of year, get a little cleansing cry, this will do it. The craziest story that I have read recently is gonna have to go to The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This book was nuts, okay? The plot twist I did not see coming, but it was epic. I absolutely loved it so much. You just don't see it coming. I will say that the beginning of the book, I wasn't a fan. I honestly didn't even want to read this book. I heard that it was coming out and I was just like, meh, it doesn't sound like it'll be my speed. So I didn't want to read it. Libby had it available, so I was like, what the heck? Let me just give it a go. It's free. I started to listen. Was not a fan. 25% in, I was a fan. I was wildly invested, and it's only because of the male main character. The female main character in her storyline, it's very annoying. She ignores all the red flags. She's very ditzy and like bimbo-like, and it just wasn't always the funnest to read about. The book felt very juvenile. She felt very childish, but he's a psychopath. I like reading about psychopaths, and his story was so compelling. It was so funny, and it was so fun, and it just kept me guessing. Let me take a step back. So the main character, she's going on all these like dates from online dating, and she meets this guy. He seems like the perfect guy. We as the reader know he's not a perfect guy because the story takes place present day and in high school. So we're getting to see Mr. Crazo here in high school, so we know that he's not a perfect guy. While the dating is going on, there's also a murder that has occurred. One of the guys that she dated online, he was a bit weird. You have like a detective who, you know, is obviously looking into the murder, and then obviously she's just living her life, so she has her best friend, and the best friend is like dating somebody who she's not the biggest fan of, and who she actually thinks is the one who killed their other friend. And so it's just crazy. Like I said, the story is crazy. It's a lot going on, but it's so funny. It's just so wild. It's one of those books that like keeps you guessing because you think you have it figured out and you indeed do not have it figured out. I would not say that this is Frida's best work. I did appreciate not being gaslit. That was one of the things I did not like and never lie. I appreciate an author who knows how to do a twist well. It's like you should leave enough breadcrumbs that by the end of the book we can still be surprised without feeling like you gaslit us. That's exactly what she was able to master in this book, and I think that's why I thought it was fun. So that is by far the craziest book that I have read, and I really appreciate and I enjoyed reading about that male main character. He was such a cool character to get to know, and it's just so crazy because you just like are so quick to judge people, but after finding out more information about him, I actually thought he was a pretty cool dude. He was still crazy, but he wasn't as bad as I thought he was. So anyway, check it out if you want like a crazy, fun little, you know, middle of the road type of thriller. Go ahead and give that one a go. The next book that I would like to discuss is my biggest disappointment, and I hate that for me, and it would have to be The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. This was one of the books that I was very excited to read. It's such a pretty book. I love it so much. I don't recommend it, but I didn't hate it. I gave it a 3 stars, so I just liked it. It was a book that I liked, I enjoyed, I read it, but it's not one that I'm gonna recommend. The reason that I wanted to talk about it though is because the things I liked about it, I really did like. I appreciate Catherine Center's writing style. It's similar to that of Annabelle, where she does a very good job of balancing contemporary with the romance. It's not like overly gushy. And there's other stuff going on alongside the romance to keep me engaged and invested. However, I did not like the male main character at all. He just didn't do it for me. Basically, the story follows our main character as she gets the opportunity to write a screenplay or write the script, for a celebrity that she actually deeply admires. He's just not all that nice. He's very grumpy, and I thought at some point his behavior would get explained, and it did not. Like, it did, but it didn't do it for me. So their romance, it just did not feel believable. What I loved was all the positive advocacy and just the beautiful little knowledge nuggets about romance books. Someone like me, I don't typically read rom-coms. I realized that about me, that I don't really like them. But after reading a book like this, I appreciate them. I understand what they're supposed to do. I understand what the goal is that these authors are trying to accomplish. I think I might have made a highlight in here. Maybe not. It might have been the only highlight in here, and that's why I thought I could come across it so easily. Or maybe it wasn't. I'm not saying it, but there was this line in here that was just so cute, and it was like the main goal of like a rom-com, and so I like that. I like what she was trying to accomplish here as far as that. I did like the witty banter. I did like the secondary characters and some of the things going on the side. Like I said, she has to leave. She's actually the primary caregiver for her father, and she leaves her sister in charge, which she's very apprehensive about, but she relinquishes a little bit of control, and she entrusts her sister to take care of their dad while she goes and basically fulfills this massive dream. So I love that for her. It was just him, and I was like, he wasn't it for me. I feel like she deserved better, and so yeah, that was a huge disappointment for me. All right, so the next book that I want to discuss is the most compelling story that I have read recently, and it has to be Strange Sally Diamond. And I had a blast with this book. I was captivated. I was hooked. Extremely compelling story. I remember having my headphones on, having a blanket on me, and I was staring at the wall just listening. I was so engulfed. Like, I love this story. This was almost so close to being a 5-star read for me until like that last chapter in the epilogue. They just didn't do it for me. That was the only reason why. But this story is just so unforgettable. So our main character is very literal, and her father dies. He says that he wants to be cremated, and so she decides she wants to cremate him. Obviously, we know that that is not something that you can do. You cannot just cremate people. So the dad's friends are like, okay, maybe you should just come live with me for a while. I'll let them know that you're a little bit different, or else you're probably gonna go to jail. So she goes, and does she go and stay with her? Because it was a while ago when I read this. I think she might have stayed with her for like a day, but then she goes back home. But anyway, I think the lady just, comes over and checks on her, whatever the case may be. And I like that they are not just jumping to label her with, like, let's say autism, for example. Some people, their behavior is a direct reflection of how they were brought up. And so as we're reading in the story, she ends up discovering things about her childhood and how she grew up. It's exactly why she's so literal. It's why she has social skills. It's why she's the way that she is. This story is so heartbreaking, but it's also so freaking good. It's disturbing, it's introspective, and it's completely unforgettable. Like, you can literally read this book in one sitting, although I couldn't because I just needed a couple mental breaks. Yeah, I can't go too deep into it, like I said, without doing spoilers, but it is just a heartbreak. This is another heartbreakingly beautiful story, but it's funny, it's fun. It's not anything like, what was that sad story? 1,000 Boy Kisses is just sad. This is sad, but in a different type of way. It's so interesting. It's so good. Look at me, just like at a loss for words. I'm just reflecting all over again. And it's just so sad how, like, what we do as parents, it truly does influence our children. And that's all I'm gonna say. It literally was, like I said, the most compelling story that I have read recently. So the most important story that I have read recently is The Woman, and this is by Kristen Hanna. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and read the review for this one. This book was just so good. I feel like it's important because I think a lot of people forgot that women served in the Vietnam War, and we get to see that highlighted here in the book. It says, this is such a heartbreaking but important story being told here. Kristen Hanna is an amazingly talented storyteller, and Julia Whalen narrates the audiobook perfectly. The Woman is a story about war, loss, sexism, love, heartbreak, friendships. Oh, it's so deep into the friendships. PTSD is huge, and the lifelong battle that is grief. The story highlights the way women were discredited and overlooked for serving in the Vietnam War, never getting the same respect, praise, or resources as the men that survived the war, which is why the women struggle with so much PTSD. And the story is a reminder that everyone copes with trauma differently. That's so highlighted. She went as a nurse, but then some of her other friends were there as well, and how they responded to this trauma of coming back from the war and getting back acclimated to everyday life. It was completely and totally different, but her girls had her back. They were there for her. And it says, when you need help, ask for it. When she did need help, she did ask for it. And then there were times where she didn't. Asking for help is so important because self-isolation and numbing aids can only take you so far. True healing comes from learning to be uncomfortable while remembering. That was her biggest thing. She couldn't take the time to be uncomfortable and remember what actually happened. But it's important to allow yourself time to do that, because that is how you are going to work through what broke you in the first place. It's holding yourself accountable, blocking out the noise, and embracing the quiet. It's remembering you are loved and capable of loving, even if you've been betrayed and had your heart broken in the past. This was a really good book. I feel like kids should be reading it at school. Well, maybe not. Like I said, there's some trigger warnings here too, but Kristen Hanna is just such an amazing storyteller, and I loved it. Okay, so let's transition to something a little bit more light. So the funniest book that I read recently is Margot's Got Money Problems, and I think it's by, I know the last name is Thorpe. Let me see, what was her name? Rufi Thorpe. I really enjoyed this book. It's a crazy story. Basically we have a main character who's having an affair with her professor. She ends up getting pregnant. Her mom and everyone's like, girl, you do not need to be having this baby. But she follows her own mind, and she has this child, but then now she needs money. She needs to make a living. And so she starts like an OnlyFans, which is so funny. And then it's just so funny. It's like the funniest, but the most honest, the most raw coming of age. And I loved her. All these characters were so flawed. There's so many reasons for you not to like them, but you're constantly liking them and rooting for them. The other characters are mainly like her mom and her dad. So her mother had her young, and she's like, oh, I don't want you to go down the same path as me. Her dad wasn't around because her dad was married, so he had other kids and stuff like that. He ends up getting into some trouble, and so he needs a place to stay. So he reaches out to Margot, and they finally end up repairing their relationship, and you get to see them go on a journey of healing together, where she gets to show up and be there for him, and also be honest about some things, and also ask him some difficult questions. And it was impeccable character development. I had a good time with it. The next book that I want to discuss is the best character study. I think that the best character study I read recently is The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth, and I think this is my new favorite by her as an author. I think this might be my third or fourth. think it's my third book by her. This is a great character study book on manipulation and narcissism. But my favorite thing about this book was Fern and getting to know her and getting to see the world through her eyes. She basically is very strict with her routine, and she also centers a lot of her life around her sister Rose. So we get to see the challenging, complicated, but also very comforting relationship of sisterhood. This book is basically about two sisters, and Rose, she cannot get pregnant. So Fern is like, oh, I'm gonna just have a baby for her. I just need to find a guy. So just so funny, right? Like, oh, okay. Obviously she has like some social skill issues. And so it's just really beautiful to see Fern realize that she has value and that other people besides Rose loves her as well. And I'm starting to see that I appreciate psychological thrillers a lot, actually. Last but not least, the most inspirational story that I read recently is The Wedding People. This was such a beautiful little surprise. I didn't know anything about this book. I actually got to listen to this through Libro FM, and I also got to listen to Margot's Got Money Problems through Libro FM, so shout out to them. But yeah, this was a really good book, and I really appreciate the way that the author was able to tackle such a painful subject in such a delicate way. So basically our main character is very unhappy with her life, and she decides to go to this beautiful hotel to end her life. But the hotel that she chose, there's this massive wedding going on, and our main character, the other well, she's really a secondary character, Lila, she has rented out the whole venue. And so she's like, girl, who are you and what are you doing here? Our main character, what is her name here? I think it was Phoebe. Yes, Phoebe. So Phoebe ends up telling Lila, like, girl, I'm here to, you know, end it all. And so Lila's like, no, you cannot do that. I can't have that happening on like my wedding weekend. So we get to also just see how self-absorbed people are. It was just so cool because we also get to see Phoebe's relationship with Lila and how it kind of like breathes life back into Phoebe without her knowing it. It also breathes life back into Lila without her knowing it. And that's why I thought it was just so inspirational to be that low where you are getting ready to end it all and to find yourself and even stand up to some people, because there's some other things that happen where she gets the opportunity to stand up to someone. She gets the opportunity to feel attraction. She gets the opportunity to be of value to Lila, and she felt like she wasn't of value for so long. And I love that for her. It's not, the story is not being told in like this overly preachy way. This author is phenomenal in the way that she is handling this topic, because the book was also funny, heartwarming. It had so many good components, and you would think that would not be the case for such a heavy subject matter, but it was such a surprisingly fun little read, and I had such a good time with it. So hopefully you found some books that you can add to your TBR. Let me know if you have read any of these books, if we had similar thoughts, and even if we had different thoughts. If you hated something that I love, or if you've loved something that I did not like, please let me know in the comment section. I love our book community. I love how freely we can speak to one another, and I just love the culture and the community that we have cultivated and created here. I love it so much, and so I love nerding out and geeking out down in the comment section with you guys. I am now sharing my Goodreads. I will have that in the description box, so if you like to add me there, I do like to add people. Do not forget to prioritize self-care, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.